Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to a day of hope and promise, to a place of peace and comfort, to a place where bells bring us into worship. Yes, welcome to a journey towards truth and towards justice, and to a community of courage and of love, a community that will help us all along our way. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. I'm Robin Cooper, and I'll be your worship associate today. This is a welcoming congregation, and we are always working on how to better welcome and care for one another. If this is your first time here, we're so glad you've come. And whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Huichin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land. We acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in right relationship with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. Let us kindle our chalice flame with these words by Bruce Southworth. For the gift of this day, and for our community of spiritual nurture and compassion, we give thanks. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. May our many sparks meet and merge in communion of heart and soul. We also pause to remind ourselves of some of the foundations of resilience. With Reverend Michelle, we light a candle of courage, a candle of acts of service, a candle of fellowship, and a candle of hope. May we find and cultivate these foundations of our resilience in ourselves and in one another. Now please join us in singing our opening song, number 298, Wake Now My Senses. The words will be on the screen.
Keep with us.
sang our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
Today, for the music for centering, let's sing together number 1072 in the Teal hymnal, Evening Breeze. This song expresses how, even though the day may be coming to a close, you may find that your spirit awakens and you become aware of the presence of the earth. Since we're a little unfamiliar with this song, I'll be going over the melody with you in phrases, and then we'll sing it together as a round. So I invite you to listen first as I sing a phrase, and then sing it back twice. So here we go. Listen first. Evening breeze, spirit song. Now you. Evening breeze. One more time. Evening breeze, spirit song. Second phrase, listen. Sings to me when the day is done. Now you. Sings to me. One more. Sings to me when the day is done. Next phrase, listen. Mother Earth awakens me. Now you. One more. Last phrase, listen. With the heartbeat of the sea. Now you. Last time. With the heartbeat of the sea. Beautiful. Now let's sing it all together. The first time through, we'll sing it in unison, and then the second time, this side, left side will be group one, and right side, if you would, be group two. And group two will come in after group one sings all the way through the first line. And Paul will be helping us. So just listen for Paul when he comes in, and come in with him. So here we go. All together. Evening breeze, spirit song, sings to me when the day is done. Mother Earth awakens me with the heartbeat of the sea. Group one. Evening breeze, spirit song. Group two. Sings to me when the day is done.
Sings to me when the day is gone. Mother Earth awakens me with the heartbeat of the sea. Evening breeze, spirit song, sings to me when the day is done. Mother Earth awakens me with the heartbeat of the sea. Evening breeze, spirit song, sings to me when the day is done. Mother Earth awakens me with the heartbeat of the sea.
Let's invite kids and anyone who's young and in spirit, I think that's how it goes, right? To come on up to the story girl ages.
Sing it. Oh, it is on. Did it start?
Apple Days, a Rosh Hashanah story. What are you looking forward to this Rosh Hashanah? Katie's teacher asked the class. Hearing the shofar, shouted Max. Chicken soup at Grandma's, exclaimed Abby. Katie raised her hand, beaming. Applesauce, she said, but not just any kind. Each year, my mom and I go apple picking, and then we make our own. Katie had even more to share. And I will have a new baby cousin later this month. Applesauce and a baby in the new year? Her teacher replied. How exciting. Katie loved apples. She loved biting into their crispy skin and discovering the sweet, tart taste inside. But she loved applesauce even more. Every year at the orchard, Katie and her mother would search for the perfect apples. They would walk the rows, picking some variety until their bucket was full. At home, Katie would place 10 apples on the kitchen counter, and her mother would start to peel. Katie watched as her steady hands moved quickly in circles, unraveling the skin like thread from a spool. Then Katie's mother would core and slice the apples, and Katie would put them into their biggest pot. Katie would take the cinnamon and sugar from the pantry and sprinkle them into the pot. Finally, she would squeeze in some lemon juice and add a little bit of water. Soon the kitchen would fill with the sweet smell of apples and cinnamon. Just thinking about it made Katie's mouth water. Let's make next Wednesday Apple Day, said Katie's mother, and Katie drew a big apple on the calendar. Katie told everyone about Apple Day. Soon her dad knew, her neighbor knew, Carla the hairdresser knew, and Sam the shoe store man knew. The principal knew, Rabbi Portney knew, and her friends Max and Abby knew. On Monday, she told her class, it's getting closer. Katie couldn't wait for each day to pass. On Tuesday, the phone rang and Katie answered. Hi, said Aunt Leah. May I speak to your mom, Katie? Oh, hi, said Katie. Guess what? We are going. Katie, I'm sorry to interrupt, sweetie, but I need your mom now. Katie was puzzled. Aunt Leah always wanted to hear about everything, but Katie went to find her mother. When her mom hung up the phone, she turned to Katie. Your new baby cousin is coming early, so I'm afraid we can't go apple picking tomorrow. But Mommy, Katie cried, you promised. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I know this is disappointing for you, Katie. It is for me too, but I have to help Aunt Leah. It's your job to be a big girl. But we won't have applesauce for Rosh Hashanah, said Katie sadly. The next day, Katie's father walked her to school. Why so sad? The crossing guard asked. Is Apple Day today? We can't go, Katie mumbled. Can't go? Asked Max. Why? Because of the baby, Katie said. Max told Abby, who told their teacher, who told the principal, who told the rabbi. When Abby got her hair cut, she told Carla, and when Max went to buy school shoes, he told Sam. When Katie and her dad arrived home after school, they found a bright red apple on the doorstep. Next to it was a note that said, Dear Katie, I heard about what happened. Maybe this will help. Love, Rabbi Portney. The next day, the crossing guard handed Katie a yellow apple, and her principal placed another in her backpack. Katie's teacher gave her an apple at circle time. So did each of her friends. Her backpack was almost full. Walking home with her dad, Katie passed the shoe store. Sam, too, had a surprise, a jar of cinnamon. Wait, Katie, shouted Carla from the beauty shop. I have some sugar and a lemon for you. When they got home, Katie lined up 10 apples on the kitchen counter and tried to remember what her mother did next. She and her father stared at the apples, the cinnamon, the sugar, and the lemon, wondering exactly how to turn them into applesauce. First, we have to peel them, said Katie. So her father took out the peeler and got to work. What's next? Her dad asked. Mommy finds recipes on the computer, Katie suggested, and climbed into her father's lap as he searched the internet. Next, we have to core and chop the apples, her dad said, reading from the screen. Then Mommy puts them into a big pot. Katie continued, "We have to find it." In went the apples, then the cinnamon and sugar, and finally the lemon juice. Dad turned on the stove. Soon the kitchen filled with the sweet smell of apples and cinnamon. One taste and they knew. "We did it," Katie exclaimed. The next morning, Katie walked into her classroom, proudly carrying a tray of cups filled with applesauce. "Thanks for your help, everybody," she said. A few days later, on Rosh Hashanah, she filled Grandma's crystal bowl with applesauce and placed it in the center of the holiday table. When her mother arrived with Aunt Leah and her new cousin Will, she hugged Katie close. Together, they gazed at tiny Will. Then Katie led her mother to the table. "Oh my," was all her mother could say. Her father laughed. There was one more surprise. Katie reached into her pocket and pulled out a freeze jar filled with applesauce. Not for now, of course, but soon enough Will would taste it and smile. They all would. The end.
Let's now make some time in our service for our hearts and our spirits, a time to embrace and share with each other that which we may each be carrying. During our time of silence this morning, I invite you to share aloud, like we had a comment section here in the sanctuary, share aloud any joys or sorrows, briefly by the way, or significant milestones. If you're online, I invite you to share them in the comments. As we hear them, I invite you to open your heart to those around you and hold that which others may be carrying, whether spoken or carried silently in their hearts. Let's join now in a time of care. May we hold these, as well as all that we may be carrying, in the embrace of this loving community. I invite you now to join in the spirit of meditation and imagination for this meditation inspired by Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, which begins at sundown this evening. I invite you to find a comfortable position where you are. Close your eyes if you wish. Take a deep breath and try to find the restorative power of air and water in the air that you breathe in. We must breathe to live, but our bodies also need water to survive. Our bodies are more than half water. The air we breathe contains tiny droplets of water vapor. Can you feel them in your breath, flowing in and out of your body like waves gently rolling in and out from the shore? Take in a nice deep breath and try to feel them. Now, if you can, feel your feet on the floor or even just the seat underneath you. Feel your connection to this sanctuary or the sanctuary surrounding you wherever you are. Its foundation grounded in the earth, connecting us to the generations who have gathered before us. Ancestors whose presence lingers in this sacred space. What dreams and visions did they pursue? Now imagine these ancestors calling us on to create a new community at the start of this new year. What sort of a community will we be? Tonight marks the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, which commemorates the creation of the world. Each new year is seen as an opportunity for a new creation, a time to refresh and recreate ourselves and our communities, a new opportunity to fulfill our dreams and hopes for a better world. Ancient Hebrew tradition says that before the earth was created, the world was a wild ocean full of dangerous sea monsters. Our world may indeed sometimes feel like a wild ocean. We may feel like we are fighting against impossibly strong sea monsters. But the waters are as mighty and powerful as the sea monsters, and that power runs in and through us with each and every one of our breaths. As we breathe, may we feel the rhythm of our breath, like the powerful waves crashing on the shores, turning and tumbling the largest boulders into tiny grains of sand. As we breathe in, may we feel the restorative power of air and water, the air and water nourishing the cells of our bodies, giving us the power to pursue our wildest dreams for our community and our world. As you breathe, notice the sounds around you. Maybe like the whistle of the mighty ocean, out like the crashing of the powerful waves. Let us breathe together and make those sounds together as we find our strength to begin the work of creation in this new year.
Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est, ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est.
This is a reading by Layla Ibrahim called Messy and Imperfect Beloved Community. I have been going to the same church for a very long time. For nearly 30 years, most Sundays, I have walked through our beautiful redwood doors. In all those years, I have filled a variety of leadership positions, from owl teacher to board president, usher coordinator, to stewardship co-chair. And in all those years, my congregation has had ample opportunity to disappoint me. I am disappointed when people don't think my justice project is the one we should collectively work on. I am disappointed when people want different music than I do. I am disappointed that we don't all agree that our children's ministry is the most important priority in the church. I am disappointed that people don't give enough time, talent, or treasure to the church as I do. I am disappointed, well, you get the idea. In nearly 30 years of relationship, there have been lots of disappointments. 2 or 3 times over the years, I have been so disappointed that I seriously questioned remaining in my congregation. I wondered if church is actually real. I have doubted its ability to provide salvation of which we speak of. Lived, beloved community. On those occasions, I have thought, I can just stop going to church for a while, or forever. But staying away has never helped me through such times. Rather, coming in closer, telling people about my spiritual crisis, listening, sharing, caring, and worshiping have helped me to know that this is where I belong, even when church is the source of my frustration and disappointment. Because we are not a church to be with people who want to sing this, because we are not in church to be with people who want to sing the same music, or rally for the same cause, or attend the same retreats. We are in church to learn to love better. And learning to love better can only happen when we love past our disappointments and return to a place of acceptance and affirmation. This is true in our personal lives, in our work lives, and in our church lives. It is a deep spiritual practice. At my best, as a religious person, as a Unitarian Universalist, as a member of this First Unitarian Church of Oakland, I am called to love whoever else walks through these doors. I don't need to like everyone. Not everyone is who I would choose for a friend. Not everyone agrees about what we are here to do. But if I am living up to my best values, I offer care and respect and commitment to each member, friend, and guest of my beloved community. In the end, we can all try our best to live out our faith as Unitarian Universalists through study, conversation, service, and commitment. We forgive ourselves and forgive others as we stumble through. We disagree, we annoy, we flake out on one another, and we worship, we support, we hold, and we affirm one another. There is really only one choice between imperfect community and no community. Again and again, we are all called to choose to commit ourselves to building a more just, more diverse, and yet ever messy and imperfect beloved community.
Thank you, Robin. And this is her first day as a worship associate. Yes. And Smiley is, you want to raise your hand, Smiley? He is shadowing. He is also another brand new worship associate. This church works and runs on the hands and backs and feet and work of so many volunteers. Thank you to all of you that help make UUCB happen. All right, anyone here have an argument in the past week or so? Okay, at least there wasn't full denial in the room. All right, couples, on average, do a good bit of arguing, 312 times per year, according to one study. The most common time that couples argue, apparently 8 p.m. on Thursday evening for 10 minutes. Families spend time arguing too. Another study showed that parents and children typically argue about something at least 3 times per day, and spend a total of 91 hours per year in conflict. That's more than 4 days worth of time, by the way. Now, anyone, you want to try to guess what the most common topic of argument for families is? All of these, most often though, chores. Friends argue too, about a wide variety of things. And then in churches, we find a whole different category of arguments. We've got friend dynamics here, family dynamics, religion dynamics, and then all of these expectations and hopes and needs too, just like you heard about in the reading. And of course, churches and congregations have arguments and conflict also, right? More than 19,000 congregations in the United States experience a major conflict each year. And 25% of all congregations report they've had a conflict in the past 2 years that was serious enough for members to leave because of it. I'm guessing this doesn't surprise any of you, though. No. Now, only 2% of church conflict is around doctrinal and belief issues. That means 98% relates to interpersonal issues and resource control and authority and all that kind of juicy stuff. And about 40% of folks who leave their congregations report doing so because of a conflict. Now, that's the bad news. And okay, that sucks all the way around. That's a lot of arguing and conflict. But you know, there's good news too. Nearly 100% of current existing congregations in the U.S. have their doors open. And 100% of you chose to be here today. Okay, maybe nearly 100%, maybe somebody was dragged here by a spouse or a friend or family member, but you chose to be here. You're here because you want to be here, whether you're here in this room or watching us online now, or catching up with our service later. You're here. Maybe you need to be here to hear something, or be with someone, or just be here with folks that you enjoy being around. You're here. Maybe you chose to come here for the first time today. Maybe you've been coming off and on for a number of months. Maybe you've been part of this community for a few years, or maybe even many. Now, there are a lot of things that may be drawing you here. Those are the topics for different days, but there's one thing I can say for sure. For all of you who are here, conflict and things getting in the way haven't kept you away, at least not permanently. There's another statistic about congregational conflict that I'm remembering but couldn't quite lay my hands on as I was preparing these words for you. It's that approximately 75% of congregations report having a significant conflict of some kind in the past 5 years. 75%. Now that's a substantial number, and remember, 40% of folks who leave their congregations do so because of conflict. So the question I'm asking today isn't how do we keep from arguing and pushing folks away? The conflict is going to happen. Instead, how do we choose to be with each other and stay with each other, even when we disagree and do get to bumping and pushing each other around? Because the obvious reality is that disagreements are going to happen. We have different ideas and different opinions, and we're going to face different challenges, and we don't know what to do. Are there different opinions in this room about any topic I might bring up? Yes, of course there are. There's the joke, of course, that how many Unitarians or Unitarian Universalists does it take to screw in a light bulb? At least 4 or 5, one to screw it in and the other 4 to talk about how it's done, why it's being done, why we need light, a committee on ordering the right light bulbs, what are the most environmental light bulbs, you get the idea. Lots of opinions. Disagreements and differing opinions are going to happen, and some of those disagreements will grow into arguments, in part because we care about this place, and also because we bring our most vulnerable selves and our most vulnerable needs here. So how do we choose to be with one another and stay here even when we disagree and have trouble getting along? Now, this question has been part of our denominational underpinnings for many, many years. So you're going to get some UU history today. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? Okay, that's better. So I'm going to take you on a journey in our history. Let's go to early 19th century American Unitarianism, a time when we had plenty of our own church conflicts going on. It was a time of fierce debates, like you haven't seen in years in our church, fierce debates often within the same Congregationalist churches, and eventually led to the splitting of many churches and the forming of different denominations, the Unitarians and the Congregationalists. Now, some would categorize the debate as a theological one on the nature of God, because that's kind of the surface of what it looked like. On the one side were those who insisted on the doctrine of the Trinity, God in three persons. On the other were the ones who claimed the Trinity has no basis in Scripture. Okay, by the way, if you want a little challenge, try to find the Trinity in Scripture. You can tell which side the Unitarians were on that. So the Unitarians claimed it was a corruption of Christianity. Okay, now, how's that for a juicy debate? But there are some that say that that debate about the nature of God was only the superficial part of those arguments. You see, the Orthodox still upheld the notion of original sin, that humans were born inherently sinful, morally corrupt, and wicked. So that's the Orthodox. The non-Trinitarians, though, held a more hopeful vision, that while humans were born capable of sin and many gave in, that it was possible to struggle against this nature and live a more righteous life. So we've got these different layers: the Trinity versus unity, the debate of inherent wickedness versus choice and possibility. And yet, I'd even say there's another layer underneath that. So there's this lovely quandary of a question in the biblical book of Amos. Can two walk together except they be agreed? Can two walk together except they be agreed? Can we journey together even with differences? In which differences are possible for the journey to still happen, and which differences might be too much? Now remember that statistic, only 2% of congregational conflict is about belief and theological stuff. The other 98% is about the interpersonal stuff, like the stuff that was underlying this historical set of arguments. In 19th century America, this was a question they faced as they stood on this metaphorical bridge, wondering who and what would give way first. The Orthodox insisted it was possible to remain in fellowship with those who had strayed so far from the doctrine. The anti-Trinitarians were more hopeful that it might be possible to remain in fellowship while having differing beliefs. Do you hear our heritage in there and what I'm saying? However, for them, unity wasn't meant to be. Division in these congregations won. Churches split and lawsuits multiplied to determine who got to keep the property. There were fights over chairships in theological schools. I'm serious. Is the chair going to be a Trinitarian or not? Some schools went one way, other schools went the other. Harvard is one of the ones that went towards the non-Trinitarians. Why, even though it is non-denominational, it is seen as almost a de facto Unitarian Universalist seminary today. So this question remains, though, because there is a lot of diversity here under our roof. Can we journey together even with differences? And how much difference is possible for us to still be able to be on this journey together? So our denomination holds inclusion and freedom of belief as central tenets. They are right in the lead section of our association's bylaws. Okay, anybody here ever read the UUA bylaws? Oh, there's a hand, 2 hands, thank you. It's fun to read. Yes, it's dry, but it's fun because you see right up at the front, right after the definitional stuff like the name of the association and its principles and purposes, before a single one of the details about how it's made up or laid out, right up there in the lead section. Inclusion and welcoming folks from different walks of life are a commitment to the commitment in the bylaws is to never exclude someone on the base of belief, to never have a creedal test inside our walls. It's that foundational to our denomination. But of course, here's the tension, here's the rub. Diversity of beliefs and diversity of walks of life bring in a lot of difference. Where do we draw the boundary lines in our communities? All groups have to have boundary lines. That's how we're defined. Where are those boundaries? Where are those definitions in practice? What commitments are necessary to make this thing work? So there are a couple of podcasters and bloggers I follow who are minimalists and are sharing their philosophy of letting go of stuff they don't need, holding on to only the things that bring meaning into their lives. You'll get the connection in a minute. Don't worry, I'll get there. So they often get asked about what to do about family members and partners that don't share their particular minimalist philosophies. How to make that work in a household. Can a minimalist live with someone who isn't? Because this is kind of like a foundational way of being for them. This is a good question, right? Their answer to this question consistently comes back to values, as I think our answers do too. Having shared values and respecting the values and choices of someone else. There is a lot that common values and respect can bridge. And it is so important to talk about bridging difference in today's world. When my daughter was young, like toddler age kind of young, I ended up hanging out with other folks in our neighborhood who also had daughters that same age. So that was the thing that brought us together. And there was one family in particular that I got to be pretty good friends with. Now, I should start by telling you that this family was fairly conservative Mormon, and belief-wise, we couldn't have been more different. But the other parents and I quickly discovered we still had a lot in common. We had similar values with regards to our children, and we were all environmentalists and seeking simpler ways of living. And here's the kicker, we didn't avoid talking about church and religion either. Instead, we approached it from a place of curiosity, respecting how important our church and beliefs were to each of us, even though they were very different. One day when I was visiting and the kids were playing, I happened to mention that I wasn't going to be able to get to my congregational meeting that evening. That church had evening congregational meetings, but I wouldn't be able to get there because my car was broken down. And without hesitating, they handed me their keys. Mormons helped this UU get to church for a congregational meeting. I will never forget that moment because it showed me the power of shared values and respect. Can two walk or journey together except they be agreed? Yes, of course I believe they can. But there still needs to be common ground, some form of common ground and shared commitments. This is one definition of right relationships, especially as it pertains to our congregations. A key way that Unitarian Universalist congregations often answer this is with our covenants, the commitments that we make with one another in order to be able to be together despite our differences, because it is our commitments that make that possible. There is a beautiful affirmation written by James Villa Blake that is often shared in UU congregations. It's in the gray hymnal, and it's also what I usually say when I'm doing mic checks here. So if you hear me in the room giving some sort of a string of words, often it is this affirmation, although I often get playful adding things to it. Here's the real version, though. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now, we could claim those are just flowery words that feel good to say, and I admit, okay, they do feel good to say. But if we really mean them and really do them, they are a rather significant commitment and aspiration to be making, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love. That's all well and good, you might say, and it is a lot harder in practice, and I agree. Disagreements and conflict suck, and sometimes I would rather just stomp out of the room, slam the door, unless it's one of those with, that slows on the way down. You don't get the satisfaction of slamming. Come on, slamming's great. But sometimes it's easier to not worry about the work that it takes to stay in relationship, but the work is so worth it. Beyond general covenant statements like that, there are also covenants of right relations, which are specifically about the aspirations for how we as a community choose to be together. UUCB actually has two different versions of this. The long version that the congregation formed unanimously, by the way, a number of years back. Then the shorter version is what is usually articulated in worship. The Schmidts came up with that version when they were here to have something shorter and more memorable to use in worship services. And in fact, there has been a lot of debate and discussion that I've had with worship associates and others about which one to include. And by and large, our worship associates and many members that I've talked to prefer the shorter version in worship because they like having something that can be committed to memory. Now, they do have slightly different flavors to them. The long one talks about specific behaviors in our relationships here at church, and the shorter one is more aspirational about values. Both of them, though, with both of them, one of the underlying values is the acceptance of one another, the willingness to be together in community. Now, those minimalist bloggers I talked about earlier also focus on relationships in their writing, because that's really what bonds the community together, is the relationships. One of the models they often share about is what I've started calling the spectrum of interpersonal acceptance. The spectrum of interpersonal acceptance. And they call it the stages of understanding others. But I like the word spectrum. It's got 4 levels in it that you can kind of remember them with the acronym TARA, T-A-R-A. Tolerate, accept, respect, appreciate. TARA. The first stage, our first task, the first T is toleration. Now this one, even though it's just the first, certainly isn't automatic and alone can take a great deal of energy. Those early Congregationalists couldn't even get here when the schisms started to deepen. Without this, without even just toleration, we won't be able to really move closer to understanding and truly accepting folks. Toleration, A, acceptance. Not merely tolerating someone's differences, but accepting them for who they are and for what they find meaningful. R, respect. Not just tolerating, not just accepting, but respecting the other person because of their differences from you. Now, this isn't just a more superficial understanding of respect that's more like tolerance, but really respecting them, or to state it like our first principle says, respecting their inherent worth and dignity. Because respecting what someone else is looking for here in our worship services so much that you don't mind it when part of the service doesn't speak to you because it might be speaking to them that day instead. That's respect. Then finally, appreciation. Appreciating the other person's differences, their values, their beliefs, their needs. Appreciating them without any reference to your own or any contingencies. And with my Mormon friends, I don't know if I ever fully got to this A. I respected their differences and their beliefs. I don't know if I ever fully got to appreciate, though. Because it's through appreciation we can truly understand. We can truly understand folks. Now, one of the ways that we can get to these things is by sharing our own stories and hearing each other's stories. We do share our stories a lot inside this community. sharing them in chalice circles, in small groups, in conversations, just about everywhere. Hearing one another's stories is an important part of growing towards full appreciation of one another, growing through that spectrum of interpersonal relationships. Have you ever had a disagreement with someone, and then in the midst of your own feelings and reactions, remembered part of their story, tapped into what you knew about them and what might be driving them? I do that all the time. And when I do, it can challenge my assumptions. It can dislodge, especially if I'm stuck, it can dislodge me from where I am. And it can bring me a greater degree of openness and grace. That's understanding. That's appreciating. And if we can get better at that, it can help to bridge our differences. We've come a long way since the 19th century, thank goodness. We've come a long way from the disagreements amongst the Congregationalists. Instead, we get to have our own juicy disagreements. And we got juicy ones, don't we? Oh, yes. But what I love about it is that we keep coming back. Just like Layla Ibrahim talked about in the reading, despite all of the opportunities for schisms, despite all of the disappointments, she keeps coming back. We keep coming back together to keep laughing and crying, living and dancing, singing and seeking. It takes effort. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort. And many of you who've been here, especially the ones who've been here for many years, you know the times it's taken a lot of effort. But I think we'll agree that it is definitely worth it. May it be so.
At this point in our service, we invite you to make an offering. With our offering, each of us has the opportunity to recommit to making UUCB a strong and vibrant community. For now, we're conducting the offering in the sanctuary without passing the plate. Instead, you can either give electronically, or you can take a donation envelope from the back of the pew in front of you and place it into the donation box, which sits beside the fountain in the atrium. We support our wonderful Good Neighbor organizations through our plate offering. Each week, half of our plate offerings is shared with a Good Neighbor organization recommended by our Social Justice Council. We're grateful that you've continued to practice your generosity with our good neighbors through these very hard times. This month, our Good Neighbor organization is Youth Spirit Artworks. Youth Spirit Artworks is an interfaith green art jobs and job training program located in Berkeley, California, which is committed to empowering homeless and low-income San Francisco Bay Area young people. Offerings of any value are always received with gratitude. Thank you. Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service.
It's announcements time. Yay! Although the first one is not yay. So, as many of you may have noticed, our Black Lives Matter sign over on Arlington has been taken down again for the 4th time. And this time it was cut down and hate was poured over it. It's being investigated as a hate crime. Some of you may have seen on the discuss list about this. Regardless, we are working on our response to that because that is not okay and that is such an affront on our values. So to start with, we are inviting you all to take part in filling that space with Black Lives Matter signs and the like. We have signs, blank signs that you can write things on at the social justice table, and folks there will be able to tell you what other things that we're doing. So please stop by, participate in making a sign, and let us raise our voices against those who would seek to silence us. All right, we talked about conflict today. We talked about differing opinions today. Let me start that way. That's much better. So speaking of that, there are some additional opportunities this week to further engage in our ongoing dialogue about the Freestone property. Today, after the worship service, we'll be right back in the music room. Will be the last of the Chalice Circle style sharing circles to talk about stories and experiences relating to the Freestone property. Tomorrow evening on Zoom, and I'll have a link go out on the discuss list, and I believe it's somewhere else on the website, we'll have the second of a brainstorming session. There was an in-person one. We'll be working with some of the same questions to share some thoughts and ideas and creativity. And then this coming Saturday, 10 o'clock in person, we'll be working with those ideas to really pull together the possibilities for how we may be moving forward. So I hope that you will join in as many of those as feel right for you. There's more details on the website and in the week ahead. All right, another topic. You know what? We are really getting back into church, and there's so much going on. It's awesome. Our Whole Lives, which is our sexuality education for kindergarten and first grade, the parent-child orientation is today, 1 p.m. in the RE building. If you plan to enroll your child in this, it is mandatory to attend to be in the class. We like music, right? Brian Baker and Friends is coming up. Oh, yes. In 2 weeks, on October the 8th, our annual concert fundraiser will take place. You can purchase tickets online or in person the day of the concert, but go ahead and mark your calendars for Saturday, October 8th for this special concert. And the day after that, on October 9th, our newest tenants, the Kensington Fire Protection District, isn't it awesome? Firefighters here, will host a welcome pancake breakfast before the worship service. You could be able to meet the firefighters and the new fire chief. Tickets are available online and in person, and that will be Sunday, October the 9th, before the worship service. You'll actually have to get up earlier to come attend. And last, an announcement from your ministerial search committee, who wants to thank those of you who have participated in the congregational survey. To date, 75 folks have responded, and they told me, though, they're really hoping to hear from a lot more folks. Now, you don't have to be a church member. Members, friends, folks connected with the congregation, anyone who has a stake in UUCB's next minister, the committee would love to hear from you. And the results from this survey are something the committee shares with prospective ministers. And in the past, when I've looked at congregations I was interested in, I looked closely at those results. So hearing your voices and your opinions is important in the search for your next minister. So the survey has now been extended for a week, so if you have not yet, please take the survey, and note that this is different from the trust survey that I ran about a month ago. This is different. Take a look. If you have not responded yet, please, they would love to hear from you. All right, we ready to sing now? All right, please rise in body or in spirit. We're going to sing We Laugh, We Cry. Two verses of it. The words will be up on screen.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something else to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found our need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer. We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife. We search for justice, equality, and blessed peace of mind. And then we come together here to make sense of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found our joy being together. And in our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see even to question truly is an answer.
We laugh together, cry together, agree together, disagree together. We face challenges, we seek insights and answers. We show up, believing in each other and hoping that being together makes us stronger than being apart. Go now from here with peace, with hope, with joy, and remember, you're never all alone. Blessed be.